Cool. Kia ora, councillors, and welcome. All right, let's kick off with karakia. Whakatako ki te uturu, whakatakateho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, ihi aki ana te ao takura, he tua, he huku, he hohu, tihe moriora. Thank you all. So we'll head into apologies. Do I have to read it out? It's on the screen. You see we've got apologies from Mayor Whanau, Councillor Young, Councillor O'Neill, Deputy Mayor Foon, Councillor Brown, and Councillor Matthews for partial absence, and Councillor Randall for the same. Okay. And specifically today we have Mayor Whanau, Councillor Brown, and Councillor Matthews. Sorry? Oh, and Councillor Young. Cool. All right. Okay. Do I move it?
You can move it.
I'll move it. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Geordie. Councillor Rogers. Yeah, let's vote. That has carried. Okay, move to conflicts of interest. I call on members to declare any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to items on the agenda. I see none. Do you have to vote on that too? No, thank you very much. Moving to the confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the Long-Term Plan Finance and Performance Committee approve the minutes of the Long-Term Plan Finance Committee meeting held on the 3rd of April, having been circulated, and that they are taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of the meeting. I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Whoa.
Please.
Yes. Councillor Wanero. Just excited. Put the motion has been moved and seconded. That's carried. Items not on the agenda. There are no items that are not on the agenda. Public participation. There is no public participation, but we will have lots of presenters today. Yeah. So now we move on to oral submissions and the long-term plan at 2024-34 amendment and annual plan at 2025-26 and the local water done well water reform consultations. So I would like to invite our first speaker up, Wesley Giles Bedford, to speak. Good afternoon, Wesley. So you've got 5 minutes.
Yep.
And we're very honoured to have you as our first presenter of the session. So over to you.
Hello, everyone. Obviously, this is my first time being at a city council meeting. But the main issues that I've noticed, both in the long-term plan and also with the preparations for the start of the Golden Mile project, is that obviously I've seen a lot of mistakes being made in planning for these projects that are concerning for those with disabilities and those with limited mobility. Because obviously I've had people comment to me about the design of the Golden Mile and that it doesn't accommodate those with disabilities. So I'm wanting to see what you guys think about what I have to share on that. And as a person with a disability myself, the impact that the Golden Mile project will have, both knowing that it starts in the annual plan and will continue through the long-term plan, because obviously it's in multiple stages, as to how you guys are going to handle the impact on the disabled community. So, but obviously on the long-term plan and the water stuff, it's important that whenever we do a major construction project where we redesign a road, that we get the water pipes replaced at the same time. So we, as the old saying goes, measure twice, dig once, because that would cut down the amount of money that's spent on traffic management if you could get multiple jobs done at the same time. Knowing that obviously water is a major issue because of the age of the pipes and everything. But I am happy to take questions because I was requested by Laurie Foon to be at this meeting. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Wesley. We do have a speaking list. We'll start with Councillor Pennant.
Thank you, Wesley, for coming in. We do have an accessibility advisory group to help us with the first issue that you raise. Have you got any other suggestions about things that we can do to engage with people with disabilities?
Obviously, there's a number of people that are raising concerns. Obviously, you guys would have to organise a public meeting to find out what those concerns are. I do know of a number of them myself, including distance between bus stops for those with limited mobility. The fact that the way that the Golden Mile setup is proposed is that the importance that disability services need to be able to access the Golden Mile at all times, because you never know when a disabled person needs a service along the Golden Mile. So the way that the Golden Mile is to be set up and to operate may hamper the disabled community when it comes to getting the services they need.
Councillor McNulty.
You've actually answered my question. I was asking about some specific concerns you've had, so thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Great, thanks very much for coming in, much appreciated. I would like to ask you about some specific things that you would actually like on the Golden Mile built in to actually help disabled people.
Yep. I'm all ears. Let me see what you have to say.
Okay. Specifically, I'd like to ask about the removal of the bus stop at St James. Do you think that that would actually affect you detrimentally?
That once Reading Sonoma reopens, that will be a hot bus stop that will be in high demand because it is a very, very busy bus stop. I used to work at a nearby McDonald's in the area, so I know the traffic flows of that area. Obviously, once Reading reopens, that bus stop will be in high demand.
Great, thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Okay.
Councillor Randall. Last question.
Hi, Wesley. Look, one of the plans in the Golden Mile is to stop taxis from going down there. Is that going to be an issue, do you think?
Yes, a major issue because a large number of disabled community does rely on the taxi to get around.
Okay, thank you very much. And all the best.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We're out of time and we're done. Thank you very much, Wesley. Our next submitter is not here, but David Belchure is here, apparently. Would you like to come and speak for 5 minutes?
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Mayor Whānau and councillors. Who were you elected to serve? The Wellington City Council ratepayers or a green god? I put it to you, you're elected to serve the Wellington City Council ratepayers to the best of your ability. Most of you are failing miserably. I wish to put it to you that the plans proposed, this is a long-term plan and your budget, are quite unsatisfactory. And I'll show you where there are many areas for improvement. 5 minutes is too short to give all the details, so I'll give you an overview of actions to take, and I'll welcome the opportunity to go into more detail. 1, rate increases. Does anyone know how much their rates have gone up over 5 years? Mine have gone up 85.32%. The superannuation for retired folk has gone up 27%. Is that good enough? Put it to the voters. You know what their answer would be. What can be done? The budget and 10-year plan belong in the trash. They're a word salad designed to frustrate ratepayers into not understanding what is planned. They just do not understand it. Selling the city silver is not the answer. Earthquakes are a risk we all live with in the Wellington, and the Wellington Airport is well insured, paying $11 million annually for insurance, I'm told. The city risk there is already insured by the airport management. Selling city land to reduce risk is a cop-out. Insure buildings by all means, but do not waste a figure I saw of $69.9 million on a pie in the sky plan. Had the Wellington City Council Airport sold their shares last year and put the funds in a green fund, would have been a disaster. It would be worth less now than it was then, and you'll be lucky to break even over 10 years. Now let's see where we can make some large savings. Number 1, no more cycleways. Stop the replacement of waste and recycling bins. Does anyone know the actual cost? I asked about this last year. It was reported it was going to spend $120 million. But I understand councillors were told it would be break even. I don't know if you've ever seen any real figures, but I understood it was explained you'll raise the tip charges to recoup it. That's a nonsense, isn't it? You're going to see rubbish tipped anywhere. Who's living in the dream world? What cost of building the green waste recycling plant? Does anyone know that? Let the council staff produce a detailed cost analysis of that plan. That brings me to council staff numbers. Rumour was around that there were 53 staff employed on climate change. I inquired to the council and they advised under the Official Information Act that it's only 23. Well, that's $2 or $3 million that are being wasted. Can they change the climate? No. You know very well it won't change. Those 23 people will not change a thing. So redeploy or dismiss those staff. In fact, the council should implement an immediate sinking lid policy. Absolutely no staff engagements until a review is done. Instruct all Wellington City Council department heads to detail all staff employed on essential work, and they should detail what they actually do. They should then detail staff on non-essential work, again detailing what they do. This will show staff available for redeployment or dismissal. The new CEO, who has marvellous credentials, we're told, can show leadership trimming all non-essential staff. Moving on to more cost savings. The City to Sea Bridge. It visually looks very sound, but if you're concerned, install sensors that are triggered by movement, an earthquake, and they set off flashing red lights in the event of an earthquake to warn traffic to stop, don't drive under the bridge, and they could also flash above for pedestrians. the begonia house. Fix what you have to fix for its ongoing use, but what happened to ongoing maintenance with someone not doing their job?
Thank you, David. Your time's up.
Only halfway through.
It's all right. A number of those items are actually listed within the LTP documents. So
I've been
and the
through
previous
that
one.
document. It's a mess.
We'll pass that on to our staff. Thank you. Theo, you're here. Theo Vatoss?
Vatoss.
Vatoss.
Hello.
You've got 10 minutes. Woo. You can start now.
Yeah. My name is Theo Vatoss. My brother and I, we manage a commercial property at 99 Willow Street. I sent through a written submission, but just to summarise what I said, it's we are in favour of option 3, with tweaks to selling all the airport shares, cutting all unnecessary capital projects, and reducing rates. Would be the most responsible approach. So selling the airport to an investor who could redevelop it so that there would be benefit to the city, as we only have 34%, and I think Morrison & Co.'s subsidiary has 66%, so we don't even have a controlling share. And so to get $500 million to someone who could spend $500 million would have the capital to redevelop and make, necessary changes so that we can benefit from that. We'd still as well be collecting rates. This time we'd be collecting 34% more rates than what we were before or currently, so there'd be benefit there. We also feel the removal of free weekend parking. So with regard to that, we are charged a downtown levy in our rates, and that was to cover the free parking on weekend. However, that has been removed, but the downtown levy remains. So that's an issue, and it hasn't been explained, and it was in, I think even the Chamber of Commerce mentioned this in their complaint. So, yep, echoing their thoughts. Very much against the Thorndon Quay and Courtney Place works. If selling the airport and getting $500 million would make a huge improvement to the council's insurance, well, surely it would be even more helped if we didn't do those works at Courtney, for all of the Golden Mile. As well as that, the commercial rates are at 3.7 times what, and in Auckland and even in Christchurch, which is the same size as us, they're at 2.5. So we're at 3.7, and Auckland and Christchurch are at 2.5. So that a lot of the time those costs get passed on to businesses, and if you've got a net lease, you have people who are not willing to come and invest in Wellington because they're going to be paying 50% more rates than what they do in other cities. And I also echo Justin McKenzie's thoughts that he shared in a recent Stuff article, saying that the business community has been ignored and that council is pushing through without considering the economic harm, and that we'd just be better off fixing the homeless issue, which permeates Courtney Place, and that we should be looking to pressure police to move homeless people on, because it is a crime for them to be squatting there for long periods of time. So there's no reason why we should be allowing that to continue, and having business face the consequences, because let's face it, people don't want to go into retail and buy stuff where there's a homeless person standing outside the shop. And I'm free to take questions. Thank you.
And I have two councillors who are going to ask questions. Councillor Winiara.
Tēnā koe. Hey, you mentioned redeveloping the airport such that the city could get some benefit from it. What kind of developments would you suggest that we might not be doing already?
Well, in other parts of the world, to be honest, doesn't seem to be like the shopping complex, or there doesn't seem to be much real retail. People go and buy stuff at the airport. Where, like in other parts of the world, the airport seems to be they don't just seem to have an airport. People go, when they're there, they're able to buy stuff, to enjoy themselves. Probably just more of a community, more of a business feel, more commerce in the airport. And you know, if they could extend the runway too, find a way to do that, then more people will be able to travel. And rather than flying to Auckland, then to fly to Wellington, they'll be able to fly directly to Wellington, and that'll just be better for us. Yep, that's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much for coming in. I'd like to ask you, I agree with you about what we should be doing on the airport, but I'd like to ask you about homeless people. Now, what would you suggest that we do about them? Because this is quite a vexing problem for us.
Yep.
And so what would your ideas be?
Unfortunately, council is not, it's a police issue. However, council could pressure the police to not allow, could pressure the police to attend to those items, because a lot of the time when we've called the, people to say that, hey, this person, we've got somebody who's acting really out of, likely on drugs, and a threat to business, they don't really attend to that, and they try to avoid that. So council could use its voice to speak out and pressure the police to act.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora, David. Thank you for coming in. Look, I have just been down Courtney Place this morning and seen 6 police trying to look after our homeless community. How else are there any other ways that you think that you might suggest that would be beneficial for council, because we are actually doing those things?
So I'm not denying that they don't occur. However, they should be more prevalent, and so there should be, so it does happen, but not enough. One problem that we do have is, part of it is drugs, so it's not really a council issue, more government. However, it could avoid having social housing in the CBD and moving it further out so that it doesn't affect the business district. That's the second thing I'd suggest.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora, mate. Regards to our homelessness community, do you think that is a choice? And do you also think that having a mental health issue can be tackled by a police response?
So regarding to homeless, well, it's lots of issues. However, the issue that we need to at present is to get business up and running, because otherwise everybody just gets dragged down. If Wellington was a more business friendly, more prosperous than it is right now, maybe we'd have more money in the bank to attend to those items.
More question?
Yeah, keep going. One more.
Okay. I see your point. We need to support businesses. However, my question is that, how do you think we can support those communities? Do you believe that people are choosing to sleep on rough when they can have a warm house? Do you think they are choosing not to work when they can get a job and live a dignified life? Unless it's a mental health, and there are a lot of factors that can be addressed through different issues. And it seems your approach is to put more police there. And how do you think that's going to solve the problem?
Okay, so it's I don't think that all those questions that you raised are a government issue for me. So the government should be addressing those issues. It's not for council they need to focus on core issues. So how I would answer your question is that it's not for council to address those concerns, and that is to leave it for the government to handle to those issues, but to make sure that the business district is protected for the benefit of the city.
Thank you, Theo. You've got 20 seconds if you want to make a final comment.
No, I don't have a final comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Sweet, thank you.
So I'd like to invite Jane Campbell. So Jane, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm here as an individual, but I am supported by the Wellington RSA and the Kōrau RSA. My submission is regarding Frank Kitts Park development finances. In the plan, I see no specific mention of the historically significant memorial plaques now mounted on the present sea-facing walls of Frank Kitts Park. The reason I am concerned about the omission are, number one, the new 2024 policy, CB 00203, which says at 11B, the commemorative plaques will be for a term of 20 years from the date of installation of the plaque. The plaque will be returned to the sponsor at the expiry of the term if requested. This implies an extremely short-sighted view of historical events. 20 years is not even a generation. At number two, the Thoughtless Concept Design 2023 had the memorial plaques on plinths along Jervois Quay, where any memorial service would be exposed to heavy noises of traffic. They would have entirely lost their association with the sea. This plan was discussed with stakeholders in a stakeholders meeting 14 March 2023, organised by the Wellington City Council. In response to stakeholders' views, Wellington City Council staff said they would develop a new plan. The stakeholders have heard nothing since, in spite of inquiries. These are the main concerns regarding the memorial plaques, and why I want to see specific mention in the long-term plan, especially as it appears that new facilities have taken precedence over our own historical aspects and community memories. Finally, I would like to see proper financial and planning attention given to our historical memorials and plaques, which are a real treasure to our city and to New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I've got a question from Councillor Calvert.
Thanks, Jane. Now, I know you have been raising this matter with officers for at least a couple of years, from memory, maybe longer.
5.
Okay. And given that, what is the specific information that you have received from them of late, if anything?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
You still have 2 minutes, Jane, if you'd like to continue or raise anything else that you feel like.
I've made my point.
Thank you. Very useful. You got Colin? Okay. Is Colin Keating here? Hello, Colin. You've got 5 minutes.
Kia ora koutou, dear councillors. I think you all know that we are in a time of real economic, social and political distress. And for Wellington people and Wellington businesses, they are in an especially fragile state. I'm sure you will have all seen the Westpac survey that came out the other day, which said that Wellington had the lowest level of confidence of any community in New Zealand. So what I'm putting to you is that this is not a business as usual time. People are hurting, and there is a real risk that decision makers like you can make things worse. Now, in that context, decisions taken last year on the level of rates have actually made things worse. The level of rates, not only in Wellington but around the country, have been identified recently by the Department of Statistics as having a damaging effect nationally on inflation levels. Now, what this means is that it's having an impact on inflation which is hurting the ordinary people in our city. People were already struggling to pay their rates, but council decisions have contributed to pushing up their basic living costs too. So, councils have produced double damage to the people who elected them. Now, I know these were unintended consequences, but they were foreseeable consequences. And many of us have come here over the past 2 years and pleaded with you. We've asked for a pause, to hold off the nice-to-haves, and to delay rates increases to a better time. Please listen this time round. And please make decisions that show real empathy with the people. Regarding the long-term plan amendment, I think there is a good case for a diversified investment fund, but I suggest that now is not the time for any of the proposals which you have put forward. This is not the time to make cuts to CapEx projects that are really important to different groups of people in the city, such as those proposed for the Begonia House and the Botanical Gardens, to issues of concern to people in Karori and Kandala and the central city. Too many of these suggestions will increase distress and alienation and contribute to social fragility. And we all know the amounts involved in some of these proposed cuts which people are opposed to are actually very small in relative terms, but the impact on communities is high. Now, it's true we're underinsured, but I've done the research. The risk of a serious earthquake in Wellington in the next 3 years is less than 0.5%. But the cuts you're proposing in the LTP amendment proposals carry a close to 100% risk of serious alienation by different groups of Wellington people from city governance. And the risks of these proposals contributing to social cohesion reduction are also very high. So I suggest it's a matter of balancing different sets of risks. And in tough times, the right balance is in favour of people's local practical concerns. And in the same way, the whole suite of council policies relating to a new building in the Civic Square, which was never consulted on, to demolishing the City to Sea Bridge, and to the Get Wellington Moving project are equally misconceived at this time. My message is simple. Please press the pause button. An alternative is to establish the fund, but with a very small portfolio initially, which could be funded by the proceeds of a small number of ground lease sales. And in the same way, you could reset the debt limit at a level which initially involves much lower reductions in current and future capital spending, particularly in regard to those kinds of projects which I've mentioned, which are really important to people in local communities. When times are not so hard, the contributions to the fund portfolio and the debt limit levels could be adjusted progressively. But please be under no illusion. If you push blindly ahead on these kinds of LTP amendment proposals as they stand, and the other things like demolishing the bridge or committing to a new private building in Tinaka, there will be consequences in October. please press the pause button.
Thank you, Colin. And one thing I've learned is council never stops. I'll move on to our next speaker, who is Libon Ali and Ethan Rogatsion. Let's see if I got that right. Libon.
Are we sitting?
You can sit there if you'd like to. It's fine. You need to press the light to make sure you're there. And you've got 10 minutes, and you're from Victoria University. Cool.
Yeah, kia ora, my name is Laban Ali. There's an A in there, not an O. But yeah, I am the president of Te Akatoura VUSA, the Victoria University of Wellington Students Association, or VUSA. And I'm speaking today alongside Ethan Rogashaw, who's our academic vice president. So we're here to speak on VUSA's behalf to the LTP, and hopefully this is the final time that the LTP will be re-amended. We represent the interest of over 20,000 students here in Poneke. Our kaupapa is simple: by students, for students, and that extends beyond the university walls to the future of our city. Today, we'll touch on three main areas from our submission: insurance and investment changes to the capital program and the annual plan. First, on insurance and investment, VUSA supports option 2. As the best path forward for Wellington, we understand the urgent need for council to improve its debt headroom, especially in a city as vulnerable to natural disasters as ours. But just as importantly, we believe that this financial resilience shouldn't come at the expense of our critical capital projects. That's why we support option 2 over option 1, because it limits cuts to the capital program, and we strongly oppose option 3, which would see the full sale of Wellington Airport shares.
Just a clarification, there's two parts of option 2. Which one do you prefer?
You go.
I can speak to that, Councillor. We specifically support selling the ground leases rather than selling any part of council's stakeholding in the airport. We view the airport as an incredibly important public asset, and it's incredibly important from Te Akatoura's perspective for there to be public officials, council at that table when it comes to any talk about the future of Wellington Airport. We prefer the option for the sale of ground leases primarily because, as Liban spoke to, it allows council to still maintain quite an to decrease the loss in potential expenditure from any cuts needed to pursue option 1, and instead it allows council to make up that lost revenue through the sale of the ground leases, which we see as being an opportunity for council to engage with responsible developers who want to use the opportunity unlocked by the new district plan to create new buildings and new developments within the city of Wellington that are incredibly beneficial for the local economy and for students who call the city home, incredibly important assets in this city, while also still allowing council to make up that shortfall in revenue caused by the amendment, as well as the loss in funding from changes to the National Land Transport Plan.
Yeah, I think it's your part.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so we do support the sale of the majority of the council's ground leases, like Ethan presented. Council has a responsibility to ensure that these leases are sold to parties committed to real development and no speculative land banking. There's a real opportunity here to unlock exciting new high-density and mixed-use spaces, especially following the adoption of the 2024 district plan.
And our second submission is on the proposed changes to the capital program. It's it's not really a happy time when anyone has to speak about reductions to capital expenditure to any important projects, because all projects are important because they support the well-being of our city. But we also submit that option 2 nearly halves the amount of cuts that would be required as compared to option 1. Our students have been incredibly clear with us at VUSA. So we surveyed our tauira at the university earlier this month, and 3/4 of them who we surveyed told us that investment in public transport, in cycling, and in walking infrastructure was their top priority. So given that, and given the need to make savings in some areas, we submit that council should prioritize protecting spending, especially when it comes to making up the $20.4 million shortfall in funding for Pāneke Pōneke, our cycleway program here in Wellington, that came as a result of changes to the National Land Transport Plan from Waka Kotahi. We also recommend that Council review the proposed cuts to the low-cost, low-risk transport projects set out in the LTP amendment if it pursues an option 2 outcome. And we also wish to throw our full backing for the Harbour Quays and Eastern Corridor bus priority upgrades as incredibly important for unlocking the potential in the city and connecting the Miramar Peninsula and our eastern suburbs to the heart of our city, and allowing for much greater frequency into the heart of Pōneke. Good transport infrastructure is fundamental for students and young people trying to live, study, and work in Wellington. But we'd also like to highlight the need to maintain strong funding within the LTP for arts and culture. Spaces like Te Ngākau Civic Square and Frank Hitz Park are essential for a vibrant, livable city, and we would submit that funding for those is also important. And our final submission is just a quick word on the annual plan.
Yeah, so VUSA supports the proposals, especially the partnership between Taranaki Wānui to establish a reserve at the northern end of Te Matu Karangi. These kinds of partnerships are critical to building a city that is inclusive, sustainable, and resilient, the kind of city students want to live in long after their graduations. Because I think when we think about projects that we do for the city, we have to think about the people that are going to inherit the city in the next 10 to 20 years. And those are the people that come out of Vic Uni and that want to stay here. But unfortunately, in the circumstances that we have right now with cost of living and also the job economy, a lot of our students are looking overseas. So it's actually, what you guys can do as a council is reinforce that encouragement for graduates when they finish up their degrees to stay in Wellington and actually invest their wealth or whatever knowledge that they have back into the city. So in conclusion, students are deeply invested in the future of Wellington. We want a city that's affordable, accessible, sustainable, and exciting. Option 2 gets us closer to that future, and we urge you to take it while protecting key assets, investing in transport, and maintaining a city's vibrancy. I see that we've got 2 minutes left, so we're keen to take any questions.
Yeah, we do have 2 minutes, but at my discretion I can go longer. And I do have a long list of councillors who want to ask questions, so I'm going to let those who have not asked a question until I decide to stop ask them, starting with Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thanks so much for your discussion about keeping our tauira after they graduate here in the city as well. I was wondering, we do hear some calls to kind of stop any of the developments that we are making to sort of set the city up for a brighter future, and I was wondering how conducive you feel that might be for our students wanting to stay in the city and contribute to its vibrancy or economic activity.
So to clarify, Councillor, was that about stopping developments?
Yeah.
It would be incredibly harmful for the future of the city to be stopping developments, because investing in city infrastructure in exciting new public spaces and assets in Te Whanganui Ātara is what attracts young people to our city in the first place. But it's also what makes them stay. Having an exciting vibrant city for arts, for creatives, and spaces for that to be expressed is incredibly important. And it would be, I would submit that Visa wouldn't welcome any stopping to developments that try to see that come to fruition.
Thank you.
Councillor Neil.
Ngā mihi nui, Ethan and Levan. My pātai is around any opportunities that you could see for council to partnership with student associations, whether that be big capital programs coming up or other projects.
Yeah, has always been keen to come to the table. It's honestly, I feel like it's more on you guys to, come through and make that connection with us, but we're always open to contribute because, once again, students make up 10% of Wellington's population and they have a lot to say, and they're super keen to get engaged. I remember we did an event with WCC a couple of weeks back where we had them come on campus and talk about water, but also talk about the LTP. So there is interest there. You just have to take the first step and we'll be there with you.
Councillor Free, final question.
Thank you. This is a hard one because, nobody wants to cut anything. But from your perspective, and I'm only asking from your personal perspectives, what do you think we're doing that perhaps isn't as necessary as other things? And maybe a quick answer from each of you.
Yeah. That is a tough one. I suppose what I would say is perhaps when it comes to protecting certain more backwards-looking projects, I think that we should be thinking about the future of the city, how we can build an exciting future, and obviously still protect important heritage within the city. But I don't think that protecting our city's heritage should come at the cost of our city's future.
Thank you. And have you?
I've literally got the same sentiment. I understand, Wellington has a rich history, but there comes a time where we have to move on and actually think towards the future. And I think one direct example I can give you is Gordon Wilson Flats, where, there's an opportunity there to do something better. And there's opportunity there to get student accommodation and 500 beds for students. So that's something we're going to wait on, but we can't keep waiting on it. We have to actually get going.
Thank you.
And that's an appropriate point to end. So thank you very much for your submission. It's 1:51, so we will break till 2 o'clock, and then we'll start back again.
Well, it's not enough housing.
It's not enough, and it's not up to our standard unless we
kick in when Councillor Chung decides to return. Yeah, we've got a quorum. Yes, we do have a quorum. So we'll start with Miguel. Now, Miguel, you have 5 minutes to speak, and we're all listening. Thank you.
Selvis would say, thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge the honourable members of the Wellington City Council, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm Miguel, 26 years of age, a New Zealand citizen after swearing my allegiance to then Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Given my tenure and dedication in this country, and as a result, naturalisation was given to yours truly and shall vow to thee my country, namely New Zealand, let alone Wellington, as I for one has been a Wellingtonian for 3 years, commencing from 14th of April 2022. And I desire to make a contribution in the means of input regarding the long-term plan, or as in the words of Little River Band, hang on, help's on its way, and now it just arrived, namely yours truly. I would like to discharge my utmost gratitude for lending your ears to hear one's perspective, as it is indeed fundamental to democracy, of which the Council has managed to prevail at least for once, and above all, to the country, let alone the city. Assuming that I would have opted for one of the options provided on the submission form, there was a compelling evidence to change one's mind, or as a famous economist once said, when facts change, I change my mind, what do you do? Henceforth, with the cards on the table, neither of them is favourable for the long-term plan, as one or two may be up for its demise. The Council should spend the ratepayers' money wisely, decisively and appropriately, not for some vanity pet projects that the people of Wellington, who endeavours to make ends meet, would not benefit from, worse still, at the expense of ratepayers without consultation, without referendum or plebiscite, without seeking the mandate or sanction by the people of Wellington ab initio. In other words, a sane and orderly council should adapt the virtue of conservatism, with a capital C, when it comes to financial affairs. That way, we wouldn't end up with this situation in the first place. The people of Wellington wanted reasonable and feasible rate in exchange for these fundamental needs: better council service, better roading, like for instance potholes being fixed, better street illumination for safety and deterrence of crime instead of defunding the police, better infrastructure in the means of water leaks being promptly fixed, strengthening heritage building or sea-to-sea bridge, in other words, earthquake resilience. In summation, it is in my perspective that the Council must reprioritize and focus on what the people of Wellington's fundamental needs, which I have enumerated literally a few seconds ago, and defer the unnecessary projects on a further date, or until the Council's economy has got out of the red and returned to black, and may find it helpful to invest on emergency fund, or dare I say, a Colin fund. You may find this oral presentation of mine beneficial and be guidance for a long-term plan, and above all, to put Wellington and its people first. God save Wellington, God defend New Zealand, and God save the King. Any questions?
Thank you, Miguel. We have one from Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much for coming in, Miguel. If you had one project that you think that we should actually either defer or stop at the moment, what would it be?
The Golden Mile. That's a no-brainer.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, Miguel, is there any projects that the council was not doing or decided not to do that you think still should be funded?
Well, the heritage building that needs to be preserved because it has been in statute since before all of us has been born.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. I don't think we have any further questions, so we acknowledge your presentation and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Frank Sutton. Frank from Adamson Shore, and you've got 10 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Sutton. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk to you this afternoon. So I'm from Adamson Shore, which is it's really just land surveyors and planners. So I'm a planner. I've been there 5 years since, a few weeks before COVID I started working. And so we largely deal in just general surveying, but seeing as we have planners, we do subdivisions and like real low, describe us as sort of the lower scale development, so lots of kind of mums and dads separating off the rear yard to build more houses in the city. So it's quite, I enjoy my job because you have people coming who have never done development before, and they just want to subdivide and either create a vacant lot or build a new house which adds to the housing stock. So that's basically our sort of work. So my talk this afternoon is, I guess, the annual plan and relates to the hourly rates for planners and advisors. It's a bit of a boring one, but it's just hopefully give you an idea of what we're on the private side, sort of the issues that we have, and these rates. And it's not, I'd like to say that it's nothing about the actual planners and advisors at council, because they're doing a great job and we have a great relationship, but it's just a observation we've made when thinking, what's the other councils, comparable councils in New Zealand doing with their hourly rates? So the first point I had was when I started in 2020, I can't remember the exact rate, but it was about $205 an hour, which was probably comparable to other cities. But in 2024, so prior to this new annual plan, because the recent one hasn't actually gone up that much, last year it was $261.50 an hour. So it sort of snuck up over those 3 years, 2020 to 2024. So it posed us to just go and have a look at what some of the other councils were charging. And I think you've got that in front of you. I sort of snipped them and circled the ones. So as a quick example, Auckland City, they're sort of the staff that would be processing these subdivision consents, and that's the first one with the green header. They're charging $222 last year. So overall, out of all of those comparable cities of Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Christchurch, Wellington was the highest for consenting fees. In my opinion, the rate, I know it's gone up, it's only gone up by $6 or so this year, but it should be reduced to be more in line with the comparable cities. Because it all sort of, it just adds to, so when we submit a subdivision consent, the planners obviously have a set amount, like say 10 hours, and that's dictated the initial fee. And then the more work they do, just the higher that rate is, the quicker it eats through the deposit fee. And then quite often we're getting charged like almost all consents are being charged an additional fee at the end. So it's, once we go through the whole process, we don't really know how much we're ticking up, and then you get the consent, and then you get hit with an additional fee. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. But point 2, and for us it's arguably more important than the first point, and if anything was to come of this talk, it'd be cool if this got changed. You'll notice all of the other city councils in their rates, they have different rates for different levels of experience, whereas all of the planners and advisors are being charged out at the same hourly rate, which is currently $261.50, and it's going up to $266. So yeah, that Wellington's the only one that doesn't have the different rates for different levels of experience, and for us especially, most of our consents are so basic that they get done by the graduate planners. They're just 2-lot subdivisions, real simple ones, but yeah, that price just gets ticked up. And yeah, this high hourly rate is leading to high consenting costs. And based on the hourly rates, it's assumed that this then leads to some of the highest consenting costs in the country, well, compared to the comparable ones, I mean. I didn't go looking too far into the other areas. For a quick example, it would be like our company charging out a new graduate, which we take on a lot of new graduates at the same rate as our licensed cadastral surveyor of 40 years experience, but we obviously don't do that. And point 3 that I had was just the increase, and actually when we get these additional fees, sometimes we argue them, but we never successful in getting them reduced. Our clients just have to pay them so that they can move on. But we do suggest that in the past we've suggested that the initial fee is raised, because then our clients don't get a shock when they get an additional fee, and that has been done, so that's actually really good. And sorry, I don't think you've got this one in front of you, but it's one of the pages from the annual plan, like the increases. So the non-notified subdivision consent has gone from about 3,300 to 4,100, so it's gone up 24%, but that's good, because it means that we can advise people, these people that don't have any experience at the start of the process, what sort of costs they're looking at, so that they don't get a shock. And I know we're only talking maybe 1,000, 2,000 additional fees, which in the grand scheme of things isn't much, but some people don't actually have a lot of money saved before they go down this track, and you don't get more money or significant money from the bank until you've got that title, especially if they're going to then go and build a house on the lot. But the one that stuck out was the subdivision and land use. So if we're doing a subdivision and then our client is keen to build a house on the new lot, not just sell it to someone else, it's gone from $4,551.50 to $7,140. So that's gone up 57% in a year, which, yeah, again, we agree that it should go up a little bit because everything's taking longer and there's a new district plan, and yeah, all the consents are taking longer, but 57% is quite high. I think there was one other. Oh yeah, it was just the point. Sorry, I'll go back. So that was my third point. Going back to the first one, yeah, like I said, when I started in 2020, someone might be able to check. I couldn't find the financial history ones online, but I think it was about $205 per hour. And the new one, actually the last year's rate was, I've done it based on this year's rate. If I do it based on last year's 261, that's an increase of about 29%. So over the 4 years since 2020, it's been going up in about 7% each year, which there was 1 year that inflation was around 7%, but maybe not all of those years. So I guess I'm just saying that it has gone up quite quickly. I doubt you can reduce it, and if you keep it the same as last year, it just stays at that 261.50. But I think and the other councils might be putting theirs up this year as well, so maybe it'll be brought a bit more in line. But the main point is that different rates for different levels of experience, that would be really great, because then it just means our simple ones can be done simply, and they should be cheaper for our clients, and we shouldn't get additional fees. Yeah, those are my 3 points. The rates attributed to level of experience, and just that one subdivision and land use going up 57%. Thank you very much.
Okay, Frank, we've got time for one question from Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be a question specifically for your firm, but I just mean within the context of the fees and processing, have you found any sort of pre-application meetings to try and help understand the processing time useful? Maybe not in your instance because you've got a lot of experience, but for others?
Yeah, there's definitely some that we do a pre-app for. Yeah, you sort of need to. The more basic ones where we're pretty well versed in how it works. We don't, just because the pre-apps are also charged at that $260, and then if you get 3 people in there, you've already charged someone $2,000. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely getting complicated, and now, well, even now still we can pretty much do everything under the new plan now. For a moment there, we were working with 2 plans, but there's a lot more stuff in the new plan, like all the hazard stuff, and so everything's taking longer. So if we can get our simple ones cheaper, because our workload is way down, and that means that there's less development, so it might not seem like much money, but everything helps at the moment when we're trying to promote. We like to promote to our clients to take on that risk and get excited about subdivision and development, but it's pretty hard at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'm sure councillors will contact you if they have further questions.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Mike Oats. Afternoon, Mike.
Kia ora tātou, Mayor, councillors and Poiwi, thank you for to speak on behalf of our submissions. Some of you will know me, I used to work for council, but I'm here as an individual today. And I just want to really talk about 2 points very briefly around my submission. I'm broadly supportive of the overall direction of the plan, but I just want to talk about the Begonia House and then Matai Moana briefly. Demolition is not an option. I think that's been well canvassed in the discussion document. The Begonia House is still well used, it's still well loved, it's got a future life for it. And on the basis that a decision is made through this process to keep the Begonia House, then the question is, what do we want to do with it, and how far do we want to go to make it and ensure that it becomes an attraction for the next 20 or 30 years? In my view, the do minimum option does not do that. For a whole range of reasons. You know, we need to aspire to make that place a working, living and well-loved and well-used attraction for the next 25 or 30 years. And I understand money's always an issue, and I appreciate you have to make some hard decisions. If the decision is made to do the minimum, then the option should be to enable the next stage to happen in the future if and when the money is available. So I just really would ask you to seriously consider that. If you look at some of the facilities in the past, for instance, our libraries, our Johnsonville Library and more recently our Central Library, we've always upgraded them as a city to become relevant to today. We've always done the work needed to ensure they remain a visitor attraction or a space and a place for Wellingtonians to use and love and appreciate. So why wouldn't we do the same to one of our other iconic attractions in the Botanic Garden? It's also a great opportunity, and I know that the Friends of the Botanic Garden and the Norwood family and the wider community have already done some great work, and I support that, and I would again ask you to work closely with those groups and individuals in the future to see how we can make something special for the city for the next generation. Second thing is Matai Moana. I just appreciate the significance to Taranaki Whanui, and for those who maybe haven't been to that space, it's just an amazing and fantastic place and space, and it's so heartening and positive to see that the city now has the opportunity to work in partnership with Taranaki Whanui to govern and manage that space for the future. It's appropriate that the city, in my view, is the partner. It's a local space and place. It's part of our integral open space network. It's already used and managed by a whole range of groups. And I also understand that, and you will know that there are many thoughts and ideas for that space. My view is that the proposal under the Reserves Act is still appropriate for governance. It does not stop any of those other groups and people and organisations having a say over its management and development in the future. So I'd just like to congratulate you on that and finish with kia ora ia koe, i roto aua whakaro. I wish you well in your deliberations and happy to answer any questions.
You have 2 questions, so we'll start with Councillor Pennant.
Thanks, Mike. Would you see that the Begonia House also has a useful scientific and important function, not just an attraction?
I mean, I think if you look at the Begonia House in history, it's primarily been a place of something that is colourful and beautiful, and a place where people want to go and enjoy and have their place, spend time there. But I think it's also the opportunity now to reimagine what it could be. I mean, when you look at the developments in the garden over the last 20 years, the tree house, the Discovery Garden, it's a place of education and science. And so the opportunity here is also to get the team there and others to work and say, well, what could this be? How could we change this? Because if you go around the world and look at a range of botanic gardens today, there are some exciting developments globally.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much, Mike. You'll know that we are very short of money on doing things, but what do you think we should actually cut out to be able to put the money into Begonia House and into some of these other projects?
Look, it's not for me to give you that answer, in my view. I mean, it's for you to debate what you think is most important. I mean, it's easy to say this or that or the other, but I know, I mean, in my time at council, it's a complex thing. So, I mean, that's the reason I said that you should always aspire, in my view, to option E, even if it can't be achieved now, but not preclude what could happen in the future. And of course, there are some, the friends and the Norwood family and all those people, I'm sure, want to work with you to try and achieve what we all. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Cool.
Kia ora.
Simon Wolfe is up next, who we all know very well. You've got 5 minutes, Simon.
Kia ora tātou. It's nice to be here. I'll try and keep it short and sweet. What I'd like to talk to you about is in relation to some of the things that Mike just talked about previously with regards to the Begonia House and also the Kōrau Event Centre. I'd like to make you aware of 3 areas that I feel are important in anything that we do as governors, and that is honour, respect and integrity. In respect of the Kōrau Event Centre, our community has been diligent in trying to create an event centre that is for everyone. There was a facilities survey. There's been a number. It has always, they've always come back and said that they're in need, that it should actually happen. There have been promises and agreements that have been made over the 14 years, and particularly in the last two and a half years, some of those agreements haven't been honoured. And I think that that's important for you to understand. I think some of the ground rules regarding the Kōrau Event Centre have changed, particularly in regards to the fire protection and the flood protection. And I think that probably council's let itself down a wee bit, well, not a wee bit, quite a lot, in that those who have been addressing the issues haven't been really above the 4th tier of officer, and it's not to say that the officers haven't tried. It's the fact that there's been a lot of them and a lot of different changes that have taken place. So there hasn't been the continuity and there hasn't been the consistency. I think that, in respect of the ground rules changing, that is a biggie. The other thing that I've been privy to just recently is the actual maintenance schedule as to when council were gifted the Kōrau Event Centre, and most of those tags haven't been fulfilled in the timeline. So I'll just leave you with that for the moment, other than the fact that there have been a lot of people in our community, including myself, who have put a lot of time, effort, energy and funds into creating something for our community and working in partnership with the council. I think that there's still that goodwill and good faith to be able to carry that through. In regards to the Begonia House, I was married there, and I was actually planning on having my funeral there too. Believe it or not, and some of you, Councillor Young, you might be pleased about that. But you heard Mike speak, and I can't speak better than what Mike spoke. Mike probably will go down in the legacy of this council as being one of the best people officers in that parks and reserve space. But I think we've also let ourselves down there. In my 9 years on council, not once did officers come to us and say, we need some help, we need to put a bid in. My perspective of that is that everything was okay and it was being handled under operational budgets. I think that, you know, we really need to step in. Mike said it beautifully, not just for now, but for the future. You know, like I talk about my funeral, but there's also all sorts of other potential that could be raised in respect of the legacy of the Lady Norwood Rose Gardens and Begonia House in particular. I've just been to Melbourne and Brisbane. I've seen some amazing partnerships between councils and communities in respect of open spaces, plaques, for instance, where plaques are not just there as a legacy, but they're in partnership, and there's funding that comes as a result, so it's actually a revenue stream. I'll just go through my notes because I am a bit nervous addressing you because I feel that these issues are, yeah, thanks Councillor Young, just seeing you there makes me nervous. Yeah, I've just got a second or so to go. If there's if there's any questions, let's go for it.
Councillor McNulty, and that's it.
Kia ora, Simon. Thank you so much for coming in. If the council decision was to sell the Kōrau Event Centre, what do you think is the most appropriate thing to be done with those proceeds?
It's unthinkable, Ben, that you would do that. The reputational damage would be immense. The community voted in a survey last year, 74% of them that they want that community centre to actually take place. You know, I mentioned early on, honour, respect and integrity, those would all be breached if you don't move forward with the event centre. You know, the collateral damage would be immense.
Thank you, Simon, and we all know where you are, so we can find you at any time.
You can.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Neil Mudgewick. Got 5 minutes, Neil.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I've been a ratepayer for nearly 40 years, and this is the first time that I've felt compelled to do this. My wife and I live in Crofton Downs. It is not a place of wealthy homeowners, but a healthy community of first home buyers, families with children, and elderly residents who are impacted by the actions of council. The primary role of City Council is to act in the best interests of its residents and ratepayers. With respect, ladies and gentlemen, neither of the proposed plans meets this fundamental test. They rely on rates, revenue and annual increases that the vast majority of residential and business ratepayers simply cannot afford. Past rates increases and their cumulative impact have been excessive. In my own household, rates have risen by over 120% in just 4 years. For us, that took our rates bill from $3,700 to over $8,250. Remember, this is in just 4 years. Yet these annual and long-term plans seem to disregard this reality as the council continues to push for significant yearly increases, resulting in at least a further doubling of rates again over the next decade. Again, if that would come to pass, for us that would mean more than $16,000 each and every year. Unlike every other household expense, rates are not discretionary. We cannot choose to pay less or receive fewer services. The rates bill has historically been referred to as a rates demand, and a demand it is. We have no choice not to pay it, as non-payment leads to large penalties or even a charge against our homes. That is a tremendous power for the council, and it must be exercised with care. A change in fiscal approach is urgently needed. Council should first determine what level of rates is affordable for most ratepayers, whether that means an increase, a freeze, or even a reduction, and then build its expenditure budget within that revenue envelope. I understand that some of the councils are doing that. It is a more reasonable and practical form of financial management, and it shows genuine respect for ratepayers. Never forget you are spending other people's money. As an employee, I cannot demand a salary that suits my lifestyle without regard to my employer's ability to pay or the value that I am providing to them. Likewise, just because council has the power to demand rates does not mean that it should exercise it without restraint. I hope the new chief executive is being encouraged to reduce operational and staffing costs to a sustainable level. Done thoughtfully, this need not harm frontline services, but can ensure a more realistic, focused allocation of resources. Ongoing concerns about our back office staffing levels only add to the frustrations of seeing inflated rates bills. The current path risks forcing more people out of the city. It discourages new residents, businesses and investors, ultimately harming the very community council seeks to serve. Right now, the council's impact on the lives of ratepayers is overly negative. Please, this must change. With power comes responsibility, and that responsibility must be exercised wisely. At present, the use of that power feels disproportionate, funding ideological wants rather than the essential needs of the people paying the bills and other citizens. Yes, the water issues are pressing and very important, more important than anything else. Other projects like the Golden Mile or civic buildings are arguably nice to have, but regardless are discretionary, often gold-plated, and fail the cost-benefit test. Without a stable base of residents and businesses to pay for essentials, none of those other projects will matter. I implore Council to change direction toward a more realistic and sustainable financial approach. Only then can we build a strong foundation for the city's future, a city we can all be proud of. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
No, there's no questions. Ray's got 20 seconds though.
Thanks very much for coming in. If you had to choose one project that you think we should stop, what would it be?
Well, again, it's a bit like I think it was Mike before. It's up to the council to prioritise some of those things. There's a number of here that I'm aware of, whether they are scrapped or dialed back. So it's up to the council to decide those priorities, and I could list 10 and whatnot.
I'll go and list the 10.
Right. Thank you.
Do you like me to?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Why not?
The expenditure for cycling maintenance, asset management and planning seems excessive. Golf course subsidies. The Takina Convention Centre, it should be able to stand on its own feet. International relations, $10 million over 10 years. Maori partnerships, advice and capability. I mean, that's required, clearly. But again, it's one of these things. The extent of the expenditure, is that really warranted? The organics, social housing, there's all sorts of things that could be dialed back or scrapped altogether.
Thank you, Neil. That's useful. And our next speaker will be Debbie Port. You've got
guys,
5 minutes.
I'm Debbie, and now I'm here to talk about two things, your social housing and water, okay? Now, I was on the Citizens' Assembly and also the Task Force of Social Housing, and I don't agree with what that last speaker said about your social housing. Sorry, but when I was on the Citizens' Assembly, it said, we advise the council to review its capital expenditure program by prioritising spend and spreading capital expenditure over a longer period based on availability of funds. Now, this can apply to your housing. You've got till 2040 to redo that work on those 6 properties. Go have a look to see if the work was done properly, because I think there's something to be looked at there. Now, when I was on the Task Force of Social Housing, it clearly says in the report that existing tenants who cannot receive the IRS are not to be disadvantaged. So this idea of putting up the rents to cover your second half of your program, tenants are stressed. Honestly, they're not coping, and tenants have ended up out, taken to the tenancy tribunal, owing thousands of dollars because they can't afford the rent. All right, so please think about that. Now, I've put a proposal to Chris Bishop about your Arlington site that would resolve the outstanding issue that you guys need to resolve from years ago, right? Now, as for your water, I will say it again, your billing system needs sorting, your leaks need sorting. You cannot bill people for 6 to 12 months of water at a time. You're going to financially bankrupt the most vulnerable who cannot afford it, sending them to a debt collector, and that will ruin them financially for the rest of their lives. That'll follow them around. They won't be able to get any help anywhere, right? And so this is why I say, when it comes to people with the gold card and community services card, introduce discounts, right? Introduce discounts, because it'll be extra funding. If you're going to charge people for water, this is extra funding you didn't have, so I think you can afford to offer a lower rates for people who can least afford it. Now, your housing upgrade program needs to be done. I'm sorry, but you are stuck in a deed of grant that clearly says that if you breach your obligations, you will have to pay back that $220 million plus 90%. I've read that. That's $418 million. Do your ratepayers want to foot that bill? I don't think so. So think about that. That upgrade program needs to be done, and you need to think about how you do it, because what's happened with your 6 properties is an example of not doing the work properly. I don't think the work was done properly. Any questions?
Councillor Calvert, and then Councillor Pennant.
Thanks, Debbie. And I appreciate the history that you have of this and the research you've done. Do you think this council should continue to advocate with the government of the day for a better deal, in particular around income-related rent subsidies?
Yes, it's easily fixed. I've come up with a proposal I've put to Chris Bishop myself. I even bowled him up at the housing crisis meeting last year. He's still to get back to me, but you know, you can have these conversations. To do with the Arlington site, that is your bargaining tool, because look what's happening with it.
Thank you.
How do you think that low-income residents should be protected from a corporate water entity if it's established?
Well, you need to make sure they can afford the bill. That's the thing you need to look at, and that's why I say discounts. You guys offer it with your rates for the elderly, right? So maybe you need to do some homework there on what is affordable for the least who can afford it, because we could become the most smelliest city in New Zealand if we're not careful. People won't shower, they won't, and that's not good. That's not good hygiene.
Thank you, Debbie. All right, we come to our last person of the day, James Barber. Oh. You can sit down. Hello, James. You've got 10 minutes because you've got 2 5-minute speaking slots.
O tēnei whenua, o tēnei rohe, kātahi ka mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Ko James Barber tōku ingoa, ke te mōhio, te nui nā o koutou ki au. Most of you know me. That's fine in terms of volume. Sweet, ka pai tēnā. So In terms of who I am, based on what we've just been hearing, so I'm a parent of two. We live in a 1.5 bedroom flat in Berhampore, which is actually a step up for us these days. We are living off my 0.6 teaching income at the moment. So I like to think that we would be in the target demographic of people who would be quite concerned about rates rises, but to be honest, rent and all the other cost of living things are way more substantial than the annual rates. And that is just basically the truth. Yes, they impact some people, but the other costs of living are actually substantially higher. It's just one thing added to all the others. In terms of the long-term plan, so I'm going to talk about the I'm going to begin by, in my traditional phrase, by alienating all of you to begin with, then moving on to other stuff. So I want to talk about the long-term plan first off, and then be moving on to water. So I guess the first point in terms of it's not often that someone has the opportunity to do this, so I will say from my perspective, the whole airport issue is kind of a plague on both camps. I recognise that there are some people in this room and some people not in this room who bear more responsibility for others than others for the way it went down. But a huge part of that was two sides being unwilling to compromise, and some people, as I said, bear more responsibility than others. The one thing I will really want to add is that in the debate last year, both sides of the debate misrepresented public submissions. There was no majority support for a sale of shares, for a total sale of shares, but there was also no majority opposition for a total sale of shares. And both sides of that debate misrepresented that middle ground, that 24% of people who did not vote, who submitted in support of a partial. And those people were misrepresented in the debate. Now, having done that, moving on to the finances stuff. So, obviously, massive, really legitimate concern about the council's finances and over the next 10 years. However, the points have been made, and they're totally legitimate, that actually, if there were to be a massive disaster, the state would step in. And so whether or not you need to rahui over 80% of possible debt, or it's more than 80%, right? So 280% is the cap, and the limit is below 200 under the current, or is it 200? 230 is.
It's a clarification under the LTP amendment. It's going to go to 200.
Going to 200 from 230 at the moment. Kapoi. So I would say that you can pretty much guarantee that at the moment the government would step in. However, there is definitely room to argue that that is too high or too cautious. However, over the next 10 years, I think we can safely say that things will change. If we're thinking about, say, the impacts of Gabriel, if we're thinking about the impacts of Tam, within the next 10 years, we will see more of those events. And I imagine in 10 years, a central government estate will probably be more concerned about maintaining freight routes. If we imagine that we will experience something like a Gabriel once every 10 years and a TAM once a year, which is probably an optimistic scenario, thinking ahead to, say, 2034, that is probably optimistic. And so by that point, the argument that the government might not step in to help is probably really legit. Certainly under the current circumstances in terms of finances. But right now, if the government can find $2 billion in tax cuts for landlords, it can find money to support the capital city rebuild after a disaster. But the one other thing is, if we are making hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cuts in order to both maintain debt headroom and keep 30-something, 34, is it, % holding? 34%. If we are doing that, can we please make it worth it? So one thing I would really like to see, I mean, personally, I agree with what Iona said last year. I would like to see the airport shrink, but the rest of you probably don't want to see that because it's an asset for the city council and they don't want to see that devalued, which makes sense. But what I would like is I would like the council to use its 34% shareholding to push for the greenwash of electric planes to be turned into something real, and I realise that that will cost money. but it would be really nice to see that International Wellington Airport greenwash turn into reality and more than just one plane going between here and the Marlborough Sounds. Finally, on the cycling issue, seeing as it's 4 minutes 34, on Ōwhiro, I understand the reasons for tearing back that budget and pushing it up to 20 years and blah, 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 blah. However, the one thing which has been identified is Ōwhiro Bay in Happy Valley is a really dangerous area for anyone not in a car. In fact, it's a dangerous area if you're in a car because there are massive trucks going down there. And part of the second phase, I think, of Pāniki Pōneke included Ōwhiro Bay and that stretch of road at Ōwhiro Road. And I do really worry, and it has been identified by that community. I'm sure they're more concerned about millipedes at the moment, but it has been identified by that community that that school is in a dangerous stretch of road and stuff needs to be done to improve the safety around that area, irrespective of whether or not you're putting in a tiny uphill cycle lane up Ōwhiro Road. Stuff needs to be done for safety and improvements, and I worry that that will be undermined by pushing this out to 20 years. On the water issue, look, yous will be doing what yous do. Basically, you can't say it, but from my perspective, the decision has pretty much already been made. The biggest question from my perspective is what will be done in terms of oversight of this entity. And the one thing I would strongly advise is that the Parisian oversight system for their water infrastructure be seriously looked at and considered as a possible model. I realize that possibly that comes down to legislative stuff rather than you guys as making that call, but I think that Paris and their water, they have two things. They have their corporate body, which actually runs their corporate water entity, but they have a second oversight organization, and that's called the Water Observatory. It has one voting seat on the corporate water entity. I'm not going to bother saying the name of it because my reo wee is terrible. But it's called the Observatory, and it's described as this. It's a participatory body made up of representatives of water users, including housing management agencies, consumer associations, tenants associations, trade unions, environmental associations, council members, academics. Its aim is to support the municipality in defining and implementing its water policy, blah, 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 blah. But I just really like the idea of actually having a much wider representative body, even if it's sitting outside or alongside the formal corporate water body as an observer group, particularly that idea of them actually having a seat, even if it's just one, at the table of the water, of the actual water entity, and including other people, not just councillors, not just experts, actually including real people on that. It's right here is one description of it. That's me. Kia ora koutou.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. We have two councillors who will ask questions and then we'll wrap it up. So we'll start with Councillor Pennant.
Thanks for that. Are you concerned about rates increases in light of climate change, that we will need more money to clean up after the mess?
Well, in 50 years we'll be doing well if there's an operating city council. But I think it's a situation where the government would need to step in. Maybe the government starts paying rates or something like that. I understand they don't at the moment. Is that correct? Yeah. So, yes, it's a concern, but I think actually a change needs to happen at a higher level to address those issues. If they've got any money themselves, yeah. Maybe they'll get a lot from those coal companies Shane Jones has been encouraging.
Dig it up. And we'll go to our last question of the day from Councillor Winiera.
Tēnei te mi ki aku e hoa kua haramai te kia hora i te kōrero. E pātai tāku, he aha oi whakaro e pāna ki te tūnga o tētahi consumer trust, e pāna ki the water services model?
Yeah. So consumer trust. Nā, me whakamarama mai ki tēnā.
It's one of the options offered under the legislation that we could consider, and I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about how it might interact with other options that we had on the table.
I'd need to understand more of it, but if it allows some more meaningful and transparency and more oversight of an otherwise quite corporate model, then that's great. Because that seems to be a general concern about this move.
Sure. Kia ora.
O taku he oha.
Thank you, James. That's us for the day. So we will, so I notice a number of speakers are still here, so if councillors wish to talk to them afterwards, that's more than up to them to do that. So we'll just, you put it up? Oh, yep. We'll just talk about the meeting duration and adjournment. So I move that the Long-Term Plan Finance and Performance Committee extend the meeting beyond 6 hours in accordance with Standing Order 11.7 and adjourn the meeting until 9 a.m. Friday the 2nd of May 2025. And Councillor Free will second. So I'll put that to the vote. Okay, it's carried. Thank you very much.